thank you, Alex, for this really warm introduction. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today to talk about, I think, what else but
AI.
Exactly. Okay, so I know that the whole theme probably of South Summit is around AI, and AI is affecting our life, everybody's life, in significant ways, right? But I think today I'm extremely interested in this panel because when AI is automating a large portion of our jobs, then the question that everybody's asking themselves, what is our value? What's the value that I'm bringing to my job? And I'm extremely happy to have my guests today, the panelists, to talk about, in the age of AI, what are the skills that truly matter? So I'm going to start with you, Nicole, and I'm going to ask you the following question. How is AI changing the definition of skills?
So many things. I think AI is becoming the system, right? So before, we thought about the skills, to the skills you need to build within that system. But now, what you really think about when you mention skills are the input and the output. That means that the most important skills in the era of AI are the things that AI can replace, which is our human skills. What I'm mentioning about this is in the input, the best skills you can have today, it's around the quality of the questions, the quality of the framing the objective of the AI you're using, and now in the output, the quality of judgment and taste, which is something only the human can do, right? So I think, in a sense, what we're seeing in this evolution is that we're moving towards being producers, which is what we were before, and now we're becoming editors. And the best talent out there would be the ones that are able to edit whatever output comes from the AI in the best way possible.
Thank you, Nicole. Benoit, what do you think about this? And just also as a follow-up, how do you teach students, how do you teach employees, judgment or framing the question?
Yeah, I think by the time they become employees, it's too late. You got to teach them earlier, but on the judgment question. But I think look, just for context, I'm an investor. We invest primarily in early stage companies that help people advance, learn, work, productivity, that sort of thing, across Europe. The way I think about, I guess, your first question is like, there's about 30% of jobs, honestly, where AI is really minorly impacting, right? Primarily kind of frontline. You can think of plumbers, electricians, honestly teachers for that matter. It can help, but it's fairly minor. There's 10 or 15% of jobs where it's really existential, where you see those jobs going away. It's unclear actually where that is. I mean, even customer service, like the data doesn't show it yet in customer service. So, but that is the most obvious, right? Like digital customer service, but certainly, and then like most of jobs, it's not going to take away your job, but it is sort of going to change a lot of what you do. And in terms of what that looks like in that 50%, this is not my rubric, right? It's a rubric that I found helpful. It's from a report from Foundation Capital, which is a really good venture fund. They basically say, in the future, in that sort of digital space, it's 4 jobs. That's it, okay? So the 4 jobs are, 1, there's somebody who's like architecting, like a systems engineer, who will basically arrange where the agents go, what they're doing, right? There's a person who takes accountability, right? Usually somebody with a license who looks at all the decisions that the AI is making and says yes or no, or even if they don't look at them, they're going to take the fall, right? Like one or the other. There's essentially a validator. I think a lot of what we become is validators. Honestly, most people will become validators of some kind, right? Like agents are not completely able to fill the last mile, so you basically fill that last mile for them. You validate their decisions in some way, but you don't take responsibility. You're just training them, right? And then the last piece is like the human layer, right? Like a sales, which people, is the easiest way to think about it. Like, if you want to convince somebody to make a decision today, it's still likely easier to be a human than it is to be an agent. Not in all cases, right? So if those are the 4 jobs of the future, it's a little dystopian, honestly, but it is certainly plausible, I would say, and that we, that's kind of the buckets that we wind up in. So I'll just pause there, but like that gives you some.
Great, thank you. Did your perception or your judgment when you're looking for new talent or for young talent or even the talent that that work with you. Did it change over the past couple of years? Are there specific traits or skills that you're looking for now?
Yes, so these days I'm mainly working with my AI agents, so less and less with humans. But kind of like building on what Nicole and Benoit said, I think a lot of people need to start thinking what they can produce as individual contributors, because many people and like many reports are saying that the job of a manager will be either gone completely or will be focused more on orchestration. But then also, if an individual contributor is also orchestrating a lot, why do you need the middle-level management, right? So I think it's a lot about figuring out how you can produce, to your point, end-to-end output. Like, what is the journey? What is the system that you're building? If you look at today's world of work, a lot of things are broken. And I think this is not so much spoken about when it comes to AI, that AI can fix a lot of things that are causing burnout, stress, a lot of chaos in the workplace. Like, this is one of the silver linings that I see, that we will get rid of the stuff that is just like making us, oh, it's Monday again, and we'll find this joy, right? So coming back to your question, like what kind of like skills and humans, like I think it's the drive. It was always the drive, but right now it's so important. Drive, passion, figuring out stuff on your own, because if I'm an individual contributor and I need to deliver the final product, I just need to make it happen, right? And you have all the intelligence in the world, right, from all the LLMs, and now you just need to build a system that will produce this amazing output. And maybe last but not least, like looking at skills and like when young people are asking like, what should I do? Maybe you don't have to be a knowledge worker. Like, that's also a question that
like
we should
return
ask.
to the farms and the fields, or
I mean, that was the trend that was like already happening. Like, COVID was the acceleration that many people started to ask a question: do I really want to work in front of the computer, right? And now we have another phase, right? So maybe it's not tech, maybe it's farming, maybe it's anything else, like a placeholder that you can add here, right? So gigantic shift. There will be some turmoil, maybe not, but definitely shift that needs to rewire a lot of the things that we think is a paradigm shift.
I want to follow up on something that you've said. I wanted to keep it till the end, but I'm glad that you've opened the way for that. You're talking about the graduates that are looking for jobs. You know, there's a lot of data, there are a lot of articles that are showing that soon, or we're actually sensing this now, the entry-level jobs are quite disappearing, because junior analyst and junior programmer, this tool, this technology is able to do that job better than, let's admit it, right? Better than those. So have you start sensing this? Is where you work, and I'm going to ask all three of you just to share with us some of your personal experience. Are you sensing this? Are you moving away from hiring entry level because of this automation thing? That's the first part of the question. The second part, which worries me as a dean of program, is fine if our graduates cannot be hired, our junior, where would they get the expertise to become senior? So,
yeah, the short answer to the first part of the question is yes. I think this is one of the biggest challenges, like how we can onboard young workforce, and the old model is just like doesn't have a future.
Okay.
At least seems like from the data, right? So maybe shifting a bit earlier, that universities or even high schools will go more and more into basically like apprenticeship, internship, kind of like training, students, but training in a way like, hey, let's build this. Yeah. And this is kind of like, it's not about just like learning, because to your point, like, it's no longer about finding the answer. Like, the answer you can get right this. Exactly. It's about making something happen. So the education model needs to be changed as well.
I'm going to be devil's advocate here because I'm seeing a different trend in Latin America. Okay. So for context, I'm the founder of Bloom, which is a leadership academy that works with mid and senior leaders across LATAM. And what we're seeing is that, yes, teams are shrinking, but what's happening is that the mid-level management is the one that is being more impacted.
Okay.
Because you can combine someone pretty senior, right? So now the very senior people are using these skills, this AI, to automate what the middle management was doing, and then they bring, let's say, cheaper talent. So what's this cheaper talent? People that are recent graduates that learn very fast, and normally, and this is what is happening right now in the universities, is that universities in Latin America are being are having as a complementary these startups that are teaching AI skills, right? So these recent graduates already know how to use these skills most of the time, and this is cheaper than finding mid-level. So that's why, and maybe you're listening to me and saying, yes, this is happening in my team as well. If you analyze the layoffs right now, the layoffs are mostly from this middle level,
that is
right?
disappearing.
And I think just to add on something here, which I think is very important, is that thinking about this shift, one of the most important skills I'm seeing that is missing and is critical is self-leadership. Because now that you have the team has shrink, it's not about managing a big team. It's about being to manage yourself pretty well. So start thinking about that. Like, how do you manage your emotions? Now that is constantly changing everything. How do you manage your priorities? Because back then, you had the bottleneck that you can't do so many things at the same time, right? But now you can. So how do you manage your priorities right now? So I think the biggest shift is not actually in the junior ones. I think it's the middle level. And I think it's about self-leadership, what gets you through that.
So that's great. So this is what I mentioned at the beginning. We're still collecting the data. There are different trends. So it's very interesting to hear your perspective. Benoit, what have you been observing on that?
Well, I think the data that is most recent is like US, UK, or at least that's what I have access to. So right now, I think it's the first time in a while that the average unemployment rate of a recent college graduate is below the average unemployment rate writ large, right? In the US in particular. So there is some data that shows that actually you're having a little bit of a harder time early stage. I don't think that's AI, to be totally honest. I think that's mostly a hangover from like we hired too many people during like the post-COVID era, and there's some like a lot of like narrative violations in terms of actually the number of jobs for coders is way up, right? Like from where it has been, even though coding is supposed to be being replaced, and even like I said, customer service is seeing some pickup, which is odd to me. I think in terms of like how you train for this, look, I mean, I can get on a high horse and talk for the rest of the session, so I will try to contain myself. But like, there's a big problem with the way we've been, educating people, particularly in kind of later stages of high school and university for a long time, right? Like, there's a big gap between what you learn in university in most subjects and what the world actually, or what the market actually wants from you. Mm-hmm. That's not a problem that AI created, but it is a problem that's exacerbated in the current environment because, there's an expectation that you will hit the ground running today, and if you cannot meet that expectation, you're hosed, right? And so like in terms of, like all the obvious things, right? You should have more project-based learning in schools. You should have more practical vocational experiences while you're there. The good news about AI, I mean, the one thing that AI definitely does is it allows you to build things much more quickly, at least digital things much more quickly. And so you can, theoretically take your curiosity and interest and convert that into something that's tangible much more easily, and that should, like, universities should ideally be harnessing that. Which ones are? I'm sure IE is, but we are. Yeah. But generally speaking, honestly, universities are terrible at this, right? The rationale of spending, like in the US or the UK, where you can spend, easily $100,000 a year, right? Like, if you're a foreign student in the UK or if you're a domestic student in the US, like that's how much it costs, right? And so that's tough, right, to stomach if at the end of the day there's no job.
So it's quite reassuring. Thank you, Benoit. That I mean, being here, with IE University and actually all the, the ecosystem that we build in all of our schools around like entrepreneurship and getting the students this experience and this closeness to the industry. I think so that's quite reassuring. Nicole, I have a question for you. And from your role, you train thousands of mid and senior level leaders across LATAM, right? So what does your data show about the human capabilities that may strongly predict performance in the AI era? I mean, you've talked a little bit about self-leadership and the judgment, but what does your data show?
So I would think about four. The first one would be the ability to frame an objective. And think of this as we're moving from walking to airplanes, right? AI allows us to get into an airplane. So before, when you were walking, you can just get it wrong, and it's OK. You can turn it around, and you will be in the same place. But now that you're in an airplane, just by getting false some degrees, you get into a totally different direction. And that's why your ability to really frame the problem pretty well, I think it's one of the most critical ones right now. The second one, pretty obvious, but is the relational capacity, right? Your capacity to be empathetic, to have leadership, to influence, that will not change. On the opposite, that will increase the necessity. I think the third one is ownership. And for me, this one is critical because now that AI tells you everything, now who owns that, right? And it has many mistakes still. So what's going to happen now that you get a mistake from AI? Who gets to own this? And who gets to have this skin in the game? And I will say the fourth one, it's about being authentic. Having a unique point of view. I was in a panel yesterday, and one of the panelists said that luxury will become having a unique point of view that doesn't get to have any AI within. And I think that's pretty important in this
Authenticity.
future. Authenticity, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much. To you, Iowa, what are the biggest misconceptions leaders have about AI readiness and workforce transformation?
I think a very underrated topic is context engineering. I don't know, who heard about this before? OK, so I proved my point. Look it up. It's basically one of, to me, the most important thing when we're talking about working with AI, because it's about making sure that whatever the output that you're getting has the right context. It has access to right documents, right tools, right information about your business, about your projects, like anything that sometimes it's either in your mind or in some scattered documents that no one can find. Because we agreed that universities has some challenges to like improve. Companies also have a lot of challenges to like improve. Like the whole change management topic was always like this. Yeah, we need to have better documentation. We need to have better processes, da-da-da-da-da. But in most cases, it never happened, right? So now when we're talking about context engineering, it's about making sure that A, the information exists, that the information is updated, accessible. Right? That is accessible first to the agent, and then you're validating this, right? So it's another paradigm shift is that it's agent first, right? The agent has the access to information, the correct information, has access to correct tools, and we're then orchestrating, right? So if there is a one single thing that you want to take from the panel, I bet that there are a lot, but context engineering is something that I see when I was building my second brain last year when I started building it. It was the reason that it made so awesome system, right? Because you can have an access to ChatGPT, to Claude, anything, but if this intelligence is not accessing the right documents that are also having the right processes that are described and tested, and you don't have evals that are like making sure that this is correct, this is not correct. This is a very long story, and then you're getting not so perfect output, right? So I think this is the skill that is like very, very, very overlooked. Then from context engineering, you can go into harness engineering. So a lot of like engineering that it's not about coding, but it's about thinking in systems, thinking in like writing down stuff and then like keeping it updated. And that's what was missing for decades in like how we're working. And right now AI is giving us this option, but then it's also us pushing us in this direction.
Thank you. Benoit, from your perspective, from an investor's perspective, what characteristics stand out in founders that are building successful companies in the AI era?
I'm going to answer that. I'm going to just tag onto his, and then I'll answer that in a second. But I think that just at a really high level, it's important to understand like where we're at, is the last 2 or 3 years, individual contributors who have harnessed AI are outperforming, right? And what they hit is a glass ceiling organizationally, right? Because if one person is outperforming and then nobody else moves in the organization, then actually you don't see it in the productivity numbers, and people wonder why you're spending so much on tokens, right? So like this move from like individual intelligence augmentation productivity to organizational intelligence augmentation productivity is like super important, and I think really and is probably the reason why it will take 10 years as opposed to 3 years to like really see the benefits of a lot of the AI stuff, is because organizations are hard and people are messy, and that will just take time. So sorry, just to tag onto that. So in terms of like, so I don't have, this is why I'm not going to spend too much time answering your question, because I think actually the fundamental characteristics of entrepreneurs don't change that much, right? Honestly, in the AI age. Obviously, you need to understand what the technology is capable of doing. You need to harness that in ways that make sense for whatever problem you're solving. But like ultimately, what you want is kind of an earned secret, right? Like you want to figure it out. Oh, like this intelligent, organizational brain thing. Actually, if you look at the telecom industry, there's a specific application, in the telecom industry where like I can build this. I'm uniquely suited to build this thing, right? I've earned the secret. I know what the problem is. I know how painful it is, and I can solve that, right? That doesn't change. It's just the tools are a bit different. And I will say, like the one thing that has changed is the bar for what success looks like is nuts. At the moment, right? Like, especially after you hit $1 million in revenue. Like, your time horizon from getting from $1 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue used to be 3 years, right? Like, that was a really good company. If you got from $1 million to 10 million in revenue in 3 years, you were like, you could raise money all the way along that. Today, it's not quite $1 million to 10 million in a year to get funded, but it's not that far, honestly. Like, certainly you're expected to scale from $1 million to 4 or 5 million really quickly. And so that sucks, honestly, because it's like and it's really, explaining why you're a viable company if you don't have that trajectory is much harder. It's still possible, and we've invested in a weird space like education for a long time, and so like I'm open to weird companies, but it is like it is just the reality. So sorry, that gives you a sense.
No, I think this is quite interesting, and so it's very apparent that the power skills in the age of AI, are shifting. They're moving more towards like human capability, like, judgment, framing the questions, finding the proper context, validation, verification, etc. Because those tools, let's admit it, I think from my experience, these tools, they will come a day where which already maybe has come, that these tools, they're able to answer any problem or any question that you ask them, and pretty well and pretty accurately. So the challenge remains in what kind of question should be asked and in what context. But I want to kind of change a little bit the gears in the conversation, because it's good to know what are the skills that are required in this age. Are we really, and this is based, each one of you, on your experience and also from your environment and from your networks. When we're talking about this tremendous impact of AI and automation and the losing skills and maybe the middle manager, maybe the entry-level jobs, how real is it? Like, following up on what you just said, Iowa, because you mentioned that, of course, if you want to have automation, you need to have like context, you need to have the proper document, the proper data, the access to that data, and then you can build on it. All right, how real is the impact that of AI that we're observing now in organizations?
I can start. I think it's starting to be real. This aha moment happened late last year, when first models became so good in operating in agentic fashion that from talking about automating, you're actually like, okay, I'm giving you a task, and I had some tasks that the agent was running for a few hours, and the output was like top notch. So I think it's like super, super new. If we're looking at on the enterprise level, how long does it take to procure a new tool? How long does it take to create a new process and implement it? Like, we're still years away from seeing what the big labs of OpenAI's and Anthropics, they're like, oh, but this is possible today. Like, why this is not the reality? Because things take time. So I think it's super real. The impact is happening more and more into smaller organizations that can move quicker. But also, just like one point, I think solopreneurship will flourish. And this might be one of the answers to the challenges, like young graduates entering the workforce, mid-level managers. Like, I think this is where another silver lining is. Like, we will be more independent. We'll be able to build small companies that maybe, as Sam Altman says, will be a first world billionaire. There is a solopreneur. I think this is this agency that AI gives you, that you can do a lot of stuff that normally you wouldn't be possible as an individual contributor.
I want to build on that, because I think, yes, the answer, I think it will be that it is happening. However, how we stop being afraid of that happening. And I think you just mentioned something about solopreneur, and something we're seeing in Latin America is that when you ask people, what do you want to do? Like, what is your wish now in the workforce? 90% is going to tell you that they want to build their thing. It doesn't matter the sector, it doesn't matter the segment, everyone wants to put out there a creative project, right? So solopreneurship is something that's going to flourish, and how can you take advantage of that right now? We have seen three things. The first one, it would be identity. I think we need to do an identity switch from, I need to learn AI, to, I'm a tech-savvy person. I can figure this out, because it's about knowing you can figure this out. Second, you need to treat this just as building any habit, right? So when you need to build a habit, you need to create a simple system that allows you to keep doing it over and over again. And I think third one, you need to get okay with tolerance of boredom and frustration, because it's hard at the beginning, and I think most of the people, when I'm in a room, are still afraid, maybe I won't be able to be the solopreneur using AI because I don't know how to do it. You can know how to do it if you are able to fail enough and fail quickly. So it's more about tolerance of that frustration than any other thing.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah,
Manuel,
is it real? I guess is the question. Like, what is reality, man? but I think I mean, look, you can see it in a couple of different places, right? You can see it, like, I don't know if you guys follow Ramp, but it's a company. It's kind of like Brex, and they showed that, like, I think companies that had adopted AI were on average growing 25 or 30% faster. So like there is some real solid evidence that you know, and this was like roofing companies and construction, like, you know, not necessarily typical digital businesses, right? So there is real value. I mean, the other place you really see it is just spend. If you think about the crazy leap of faith that was required to spend, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars in capital expenditures before like app revenues were anywhere close to that, you know, and everybody like a year ago was like, oh my God, all these, you know, like what is CoreWeave? That thing is going, you know, to tank, and now CoreWeave, you know, is one of the few IPOs that's actually outperformed because there is actual revenue behind that. I think the reason Anthropic and OpenAI are likely to go public today is I don't think those rates are sustainable. I think there is actually going to be some pushback on you know, adoption because of all the organizational issues we talked about. So it is real in the sense that people are spending money on it, and it is real in the sense that you know, companies that have adopted AI are outperforming. You know, whether it's going to live up to all the tremendous hype in the, you know, next 2 or 3 years, where half of us are going to be out of jobs, I don't think that's real. But like, yeah, there you go.
We'll see. Do I have the time for, no?
We're
No
done.
time. Sorry, we talked too much.
All right, well, I wanted to have some time for questions. I think we don't. But anyway, thank you so much for your valuable inputs. I think that was extremely interesting and helpful for people who are interested in the, you know, and the top skills that will be required in this AI age. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.